So good evening, everyone. It is a very special delight to have you here and to have the folks online for this Valentine's Day webinar. This is really a very special day. I think of all the holidays we have, this one may be my favorite. And certainly the topic is a rich one. I was reviewing a lot of information in preparation for tonight, and I was thinking about what we should cover tonight, and I decided that what I would do was just see what the group needed. And rather than ask what the group needs, I think what I'm going to do is just close my eyes for a few seconds here and just tune in, and then we'll go from there. So love, like happiness, it's a thing that many of us think we have to pursue, chase after, try to catch. I was listening to something just the other day on happiness, and it made the point that we can't really pursue happiness. It's not a thing we can grab and catch a hold of and put into our lives, and it's not really the result of the stuff that we have in our lives, the things that we have in our lives. Many people, there's actually been research done on this, but people have studied and observed that just because people have more stuff does not mean that they're happier. And when we look at happiness, it's determined by who the person is, or to say that slightly more properly, by the person being in touch with whom they are, rather than by the things that they have in their lives. And love is just the same. Love is part of the essential nature of what it is to be alive, what it is to be incarnate. In fact, for that matter, even probably not incarnate when we're just being. Love is the structure of our very self. And so when we celebrate Valentine's Day, we're celebrating our own self-referral nature. And from that self-referral nature, the connections that we have with others. And our goal tonight is to strengthen the bonds that we have with other people. This idea of bonds has been very, very fascinating to me, and it shows up to me very often when I'm working with people who either feel that they have lost a connection that they had with someone, or that they have a connection and there's something going on in that relationship that they want to work on, that they want to improve. So that bond is about as real as this cord that connects my microphone to the computer. I don't have one of the Bluetooth ones yet. I should go out and get one and be totally up to date, I guess. But the bond that we share with people, and this isn't just with spouses or that kind of relationship, but the bond that we have with people exists on all levels. It can be on a verbal level, certainly a physical level, most definitely an emotional level. And it can be on that most subtle level of vibration where, as we say, two people are in harmony. And so when we want to strengthen connection, in fact, we have to attend to all levels, and we really attend to them simultaneously. And that's a very special thing. Many times when we think about love, of course, what comes to mind is the emotional feeling of being in love or loving someone or something. And oftentimes that's a fairly, what should we say, one way kind of relationship because we love our movie stars and our singers, and our performers and our comedians and lots of other people, of course. We love celebrities and we love people in our community, many of whom are leaders who may not even know our name. So love is sometimes a one-way thing, but there is still a bond. There's still a connection between people. But the much more significant ones, of course, are the people that we're very intimately involved with, where we have a strong emotional, often physical, and certainly verbal interaction with them. And then we have a much more subtle interaction, something that's very, very quiet and deep. I was thinking today about how we even have bonds with people that we've known in past lives who show up again in our present life. And that's kind of an interesting experience too. The way that feels usually is that there's something very familiar about someone that's usually most easily recognized at the moment that you meet them. And there's the sense like, I know this person. And they may be somebody that we have been with in previous lifetime or lifetimes. There certainly are people, as it comes to my awareness and other people have written about, who seem to appear and cross our paths repeatedly over many, many incarnations. And that brings me to the topic of it usually comes up as a question about a soulmate. Um, most of us have many people who have passed through our lives or passed through lifetimes with us, is I think a nicer way to say that, who have passed through lifetimes with us, who are very, very familiar, and who are in that sense then companions on the journey of evolution, and in some sense then are soulmates. But as I've seen it, there are people who serve us in our lifetimes, serve our evolution, to nurture and support us. And so they may show up as parents or family members or just members of the community, or they may show up as someone that we have a romantic relationship with. And of course, those are the ones that feel all warm and cuddly and juicy. And we, get very, very excited about them and want to strengthen those relationships very much. I tend not to think that there is a single person that a person is destined to be with, and that we're out there hunting for that person. Now, the reason I say that, there's two reasons. One is I just don't believe it. I find that there are a lot of people out there that we can relate to at different times and in different ways, and some of them, may be as spouses. But the other reason that I don't believe in the soulmate concept, see if I can express this adequately. Destiny is a complicated thing, and different aspects of what we are and how we're evolving show up at different times in our lives, and different people will serve that evolution at different points in our lifetime. And so that may be one person who stays with us through a lifetime, and who evolves with us, and you may find that there's a person who supports that evolution very, very well. Sometimes it's more, we're with somebody for a while, perhaps a long while, and then they seem not to support that evolution so much. We don't support their evolution so much. And there's a sense that our time is done, and that we should move on and perhaps find other relationships. But again, getting back to that fundamental idea of the flow of our life, the flow of our evolution, that nature provides us what we need. And so we accept what comes to our life, and we work with it as it shows up, so that we can continue to evolve. And it's just being in that flow of life. That is the status that makes life most exquisitely comfortable and most blissful. And that is where the love shows up all the time, regardless of what we're doing. Because of course, in any day in our life, we have to do some things that are, we might call, just life maintenance, things that we might not say that we love doing. But they're part of our life. They're part of the structure of our life. And when we are in the flow of our life, we do those things that are more superficial, things about maintenance. And then we do the things that are much more profound, that are deeper, that are with people, truly being with people. And so as we go along, we continue to learn how to be with people on the practical level, how to interact with people. And of course, it requires many, many things. I made a little list. I'm going to have to put my glasses on so that I can read the list. But I made a list of things that we have to be very effective in a loving relationship. The first one I put down, and I think it's really extremely important, is personal integrity. We have to know who we are and what we want. We have to be able to be really in touch with ourself and not lost in our own life, in the activities of our own life. We really have to be clear about who we are. And that's on both the surface level of life in terms of, our identity and what we do and those kind of things. And then on the very deepest level, we have to be self-referral, because everything really depends on our capacity for being self-referral. Second thing is we have to have skill in communication. Now, this does not mean that we have to be highly articulate. It means that we have to be able to be aware of the other person and aware of ourselves, and to be able to say or do things, or just feel things that communicate to others what's going on within us, and that indicate to others that we understand what's going on within them. Which leads us then to having that capacity to empathize, that is, to really be in touch with where someone else is at. This is an extremely valuable thing. I've done quite a bit of writing lately, I think you're aware, about dealing with people who really don't agree with you, who are really very different than you, have different values. Oftentimes you can't even agree on the facts that they're in discussion. This is going on a great deal in the political arena now. And I'm sure that all of us have acquaintances that we may feel comfortable with, in terms of being socially polite, and have some things perhaps we can talk about, like, well, for the guys, it's usually sports and stuff like that. But we don't talk about politics, perhaps, because their views are just so very different than our own. But so there's that level of having that skill in communication of how not to spoil our social interaction. But of course, to be in an intimate relationship, to be in a loving relationship with somebody, we have to have a great deal of skill in communication, letting ourselves be known, and being aware of, having the empathy for where, understanding of where the other person is at and what's motivating them. And then, of course, having, I put an unlimited capacity for accepting the partner as they are. And a great deal of patience is required to be in a loving relationship. And I put that down as enormous patience. It's really one of the wonderful prerequisites and skills that it's necessary to have in a relationship. Because when we're very self-centered, not self-referral, but just egotistical, feeding ourselves, we usually don't have much patience for other people. We expect them to serve us, to take care of our needs, and we're not paying a lot of attention to where they're at. And that doesn't usually work very well in a long-term loving relationship. So enormous patience and acceptance of where the other person is at. And then the empathy part of it is understanding the other person. Next quality is very much related to that, to the patience and acceptance, and that is having seemingly infinite flexibility. Um, you want to do one thing on Saturday night, and your partner wants to do something completely different. You were expecting to perhaps have a nice quiet night at home, and your partner wants to go out and socialize, be with friends, all those kinds of things. So being flexible is another one of the skills that goes with being patient and everything. Is just having that capacity to sometimes put off what you need for a little while, um, or to just adjust to a situation and be satisfied and quite genuinely satisfied by doing something that somebody else wants to do, or uh, dealing with the person. I'm thinking now of, if somebody you want to have a good time and your partner is feeling really down and they need to talk, and therefore what they need is for you to listen. And so having the flexibility of shifting gears, so to speak, from, oh, let's go do something, to, okay, we're going to sit down and, and I'll just listen. And I can remember a situation I was in once, some long time ago. And I would just kind of know, my partner would start talking, and I knew that my job was to sit there with my eyes open, um, meaning not to fall asleep. But input was not required. Just the attention, just being attentive to what was going on, was all that was necessary. I didn't have to say anything, and in fact, actually saying something was counterindicated in that situation. It didn't last, but I actually did a pretty good job of listening, though. And then the last thing on my list here is enduring commitment. Enduring commitment. And this one I put right up there with being self-referral, as in level of importance. Enduring commitment means that you're going to stay with it no matter what happens. If the road is a little rocky for a while, if there's some steep mountains to climb, you're going to stay there. It's not really a question, because if there's that question and your partner picks up that you're not deeply committed, it creates tremendous insecurity. A person, when you're in an intimate relationship, you really open yourself up. You're very vulnerable in that sense, and almost everyone has at least some fear of abandonment, and many people, of course, have what we call abandonment issues, which means they've been through it, probably repeatedly in their life. And so the threat of abandonment, not actually expressed threat, but just the possibility, can be very, very damaging to a relationship. But of course, the actual threat of abandonment is even worse. That's also, of course, rather obviously disastrous for a relationship. So where does that bring us now in thinking about our bonds? When I'm working with people, and working, as I say, on all levels, I try to pay attention to the actual bond that exists between people. And that could be a person who is now a part of someone's life. It could be a relationship that has ended, possibly because, for instance, if it's a relationship with a parent who may have passed on already, there's still a bond, there's still a connection to that soul. And oftentimes, there is some healing yet that needs to be done. That bond needs to be cleaned up and strengthened. And so we look for that in our work, and I can deal with that directly, energetically, while we're also dealing with things perhaps on a verbal or emotional level. So the bond is very, very important. And what we're going to do tonight in the group clearing session, which I'll get to here in just a couple of minutes, is to explore those bonds on the energetic level, on the emotional level, possibly remembering some verbal exchanges that have taken place, and then letting any roughness, any blocks to relationship. Had a very interesting experience within the last week where someone started talking about having the experience of a bond and that was of a blockage to their feeling, being open to being to loving. And I actually had a very clear experience of what that physically looked like, the way it presented in their life. That is not to say that's what the bond looks like. What it means is that the energy took on a form that gave me a sense of how the bond was blocking them. And what I was seeing was that was just like a crack or a slit that was open that would allow them to peek through, and they could have some degree of relationship, but they couldn't get through the gap, the space between the two sides of the block that was there energetically to that. So what I did was open that up and also worked on why that block was there, what the energy, what the nature of the energy was that was producing that block, which appeared to me in a kind of artistic form that way. So that's the kind of experience that I have when I'm working, and it allows me to have a very tangible sense of the bond that I'm dealing with and what the things that are in the way to our having a full and loving relationship. So just before we move on to the group clearing session, then I'm going to ask if there are any questions, either from the folks here or online. And those online, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you put your cursor down there, you can see Q&A. You can type in a comment or a question. If there's anything here for question or clarification, or somebody wants to make a comment. Otherwise, I think everybody's eager to move on to the group clearing session. So